here as part of the fall Beyond Ideas lecture conversation talk with Gene Mitchell. We're really excited to have this many students from all over campus attend this program. Beyond Ideas is a group here at Villanova University of faculty members and staff in each of the schools at Villanova that help program events and opportunities like this for students to get together and learn more about entrepreneurship. The tagline for Beyond Ideas is the art of entrepreneurship. So we're excited to have students from arts and sciences, nursing, engineering, business school, the law school, all in attendance here today. The Beyond Ideas Committee is a dedicated group. Not all of them are in the room right now because they are out making sure our program's set up for the rest of the day. But I want to real quick recognize each of the Beyond Ideas members. Michelle Galloway, Joyce Munyon, Gail Doyle, Jim Klingler, Kevin Grubb, Bill Andahazy, Amanda Kelly, Ed Doherty, Karen Graziano, Danielle Tadros, and Autumn Sunderland. There are a ton of people, as you can see on this list, that are here helping us program events and opportunities for students in entrepreneurship. So we're really excited to have that many people here at the university dedicated to these types of programs here at Villanova. We also have the ICE Center, which I'm two like the number 2, and I'm the director of the Center for Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. We have some of our student teams that are, I don't know what that means.
Somebody lost their keys.
Somebody lost their keys. That's much more important. Who lost their keys?
Gene? Is there a Gene, the Volvo, and a Swiss Army knife?
How new does the Volvo look?
All right, if you lost your keys, Autumn in the back will help you out with those. No worries, we're a friendly bunch. If you lose stuff, we'll return it. That's part of our motto here with Beyond Ideas. But we're really excited to have this many people here at the Villanova ICE Center. We're a cross-campus interdisciplinary center, and we have a number of staff members that help us as well. Sharon Ballard, who you may have seen earlier getting stuff set up. Chelsea, Marte, and Sarah are here helping with the program as well, our student workers in the ICE Center. So thank you very much to all the people that put this event together. I'm really excited to have this event going on. I'm going to let Kevin Grubb on the Beyond Ideas team talk real quickly about how to text in some questions and about how to participate in our tweet conversation that's going on during tonight's program.
Great, thanks, Stu. So you've probably got these half sheets here, and I heard somebody already talking about it, but I want to just go over this really quick. Since there are so many of us here today, which is so great, we're going to have a live text Q&A that's going to go on all throughout the conversation tonight. So at any time that you have a question, you can actually text it in, and I'm going to get it up here, and then we can filter them through a Q&A. So that way, if we have one question that's asked multiple times, we'll know that's a burning question, it's on everybody's mind. We'll make sure that one gets asked first or very quick, or just ensure that it gets asked. So the directions are right here, but basically you are going to text the number 604911 and your question, along with your school code. So if you are a student, faculty, staff, alum of whatever school that's listed here, just make sure to put your school code on there so we can also let Gene know where the question's coming from in terms of academics. And then to the number 37607. So if you text that number, your school code, and your question to 37607, we'll get it up here and we can make sure that it gets asked throughout tonight. And then on the other side of that is instructions about the live tweet chat that we're going to do as well. So in an effort to continue to spread the message of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, we encourage you to tweet about this and tweet what you're learning. We want you to use the hashtag, all right, in the dark. I'm going to keep going, but we want you to use the hashtag BI at Villanova, standing for Beyond Ideas at Villanova, in your tweets. And to, again, encourage some participation in that, we're going to pick one entry from that to win a $50 gift card to Kelly's. So there's a little bit of incentive to participate in the chat. Quick notes about that. There's going to be, it's one entry per person who tweets, not per tweet. So if you don't tweet 25,000 times, it'll count once. Unless you really learned a lot of things, then tweet away. And if your tweets are protected, so if you only let certain people see your tweets, and it's not going to show up in the chat, and so we won't know to enter you. So just a couple of quick notes about that. And we also put the Twitter accounts for all of Gene's restaurants on here, and the Career Center is going to be tweeting as well. So if you see that tweet as you're using the hashtag or that Twitter name, we're in there as well. So we encourage you to participate in both as you have questions or as you're learning things. please participate, because we want this to, again, take on more of a life beyond here just today. So thank you.
All right, we are going to turn the program over to Gene Mitchell, Villanova alumnus. Awesome guy. Gene's a great guy. We really appreciate you spending some time with us and having a conversation about your experiences. Gene.
Thanks for having me. And too, you were definitely right. Free food will fill up the room. So,
Okay, there you go.
and on the questions, it's very open, very casual. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then anything that is on your mind, they're probably going to screen them a little bit, but it's an open forum, so please fire away. I do want to take a moment to poke a little fun at myself. I don't know what I was thinking. I walked out of the house. I must have thought I was playing professor tonight. I had a corduroy jacket with patches on the elbows, so I took my jacket off. But anyway, let me get started here. I was surprised, actually, when two asked me to speak about some of my experiences in entrepreneurship in the three areas of my life. First being corporate America, the second, the creation, the development, and eventual sale of my own company, and lastly, in the development of the local restaurants and bars, which you may be familiar with. I will tell you, I was also surprised when my wife said that she was coming to listen to me speak tonight, since I'm never heard of my own house. Angie, thanks for coming. Also here tonight are some partners in the businesses I'll discuss, and again, a surprise. Thank you for coming. In any way, Villanova is really special to me, and it's a privilege for me to be here with you. Let me give you a brief background on myself, as it sets up some basis for the paths that I took in life, what was important to me, and the decisions that I made. Growing up, my father always had a second job. To start, he was a teacher, so he needed a second income to support 4 kids. Even after he became the president of sales for Remy Martin, which is a French cognac company, he continued to have side businesses that interested him. He would buy an occasional rental property or run down home, fix it up, sell it, and for a long period of time owned and operated a liquor store. So having multiple areas of interest and activity was a concept that was ingrained in me from an early age. I came to the Villanova School of Business in '85, the fall of '85, after they had just won the basketball championship, with an undeclared major. I had a great accounting professor early on, my freshman year, named Jerry Doherty, and he gave me advice to pursue accounting as he believed it was the fundamental basis for all business. So accounting it was for me. I can say that Professor Doherty was right in the direction he provided me, and this background has enabled me to understand the economics and costs of business, tax consequences, as well as understanding the financials. I did compete in track in high school, but decided not to run here at Villanova, which at the time had a long history of great track athletes, as it still does today. That fall, my grades were absolutely horrendous, and I realized something about myself. The less I had to do, the more I would screw around. And I also realized that I missed training and competing on the track. That spring semester, I walked on the team and finished dead last in the 1986 Steeplechase Championship in front of all my friends here at Villanova Stadium. Over the next 4 years, I continued to train and stayed committed. My grades improved, and my success on the track did as well. I left Villanova with a Big East Steeplechase Championship title in 1990, and after college, I continued to run and qualified for the 2008 Olympic Marathon Trials. I finished up my education by getting an MBA at Temple University in 2.5 years while going at night, working full-time, and still continuing to train. So, what is an entrepreneur? To me, I believe it's an individual that starts with an idea, and that idea is innovative and creative, and something that individual is extremely passionate about. That passion is key, as bringing a new idea to fruition is not an easy task, and commitment is essential in the process. So an entrepreneur can be someone like a Bill Gates, or someone that works in the framework of a system that makes that system more efficient because of their innovative approach. Which brings me to the first part of my talk, which is experiences in corporate America. Regardless if it is your own idea or one that has been brought to you by a system in which you operate, there has to be a high degree of passion for that idea. I graduated with an accounting degree and was able to get a job in a firm in New York out of college. I soon realized after only 2 weeks on that job, this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I was not passionate about the work, and I had things that I needed to attend to personally. It was a good job, and the pay was decent. It just wasn't something for me. It was a terrible time to be quitting a job. Black Monday had hit in 1987, and the economy had fully not recovered, very similar to the environment we're in here today. So I moved back to this area, and for the next year I painted houses just to get a paycheck to stay afloat. It was a struggle, but during that time I was able to continue training and competing, and that was really good for me. But I did know deep down inside athletics were not going to pay my bills, and I also had a desire to work. In addition, making less than $5 an hour painting radiators in houses with student loans to be repaid was not a very good idea. So I continued to search for that job I'd be interested in, and one night, reading the Mainline Times, there was a help wanted ad. Wanted, international sales position. I said, sounds pretty good. So I contacted the company and set up a meeting. The office was right here in Bryn Mawr, and it was a perfect match for me. The company was small, with only one other person besides the 3 owners. The majority partner was an Olympic rower, so he understood my passion for sport and that I wanted to continue to train around my work. But my work would become my first priority. I got the job and was hired at $7 an hour, $14,000 a year. During my first day of work, I sat with the other employee of the company, and during an initial discussion, the employee says to me, "Hey Gene, just a heads up. If you do not like doing something here, just don't do it well." I thought that was kind of odd, but he was my superior, 2 years older than me. The company was in the business of shipping gypsum from a mine in Mexico to cement and wallboard plants around the world. And for those of you that don't know what gypsum is, it's the white chalky substance that you find inside the walls of your house. Where they had not had a lot of success was in marketing to the local cement plants in Mexico. So during the first week on the job, I was given a list of all those cement plants in Mexico and asked to start calling them, introduce the company, and inquire if they had any need for gypsum. A couple days into this task, I was in touch with this guy by the name of Antonio Castillo. I still remember his name, from a company called Cemex. He was on the phone telling me he wanted to buy 90,000 tons of gypsum. Not knowing if this was good or bad, I put him on hold and transferred him to my boss. When I went into my boss and explained that this guy was on the phone, he peered over his glasses and reluctantly took the call. And he later concluded the sale for $1.5 million to the Cemex Corporation. The point of this is that I did believe in that short time with the company, and I did believe in my boss, and I figured that he was asking me to do something that must be important. Commitment and dedication to an idea are all things entrepreneurial. I also think the comment by my fellow employee was incorrect. I do believe that whether you like a task or dislike a task, it is important to understand the different aspects of a business to truly get a working knowledge of that business. So continuing on through this small company, I got experiences in letter of credit, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and the various likes, and worked my way up to the head trader. At the time, when I joined the company, they were only selling gypsum from a mine in Mexico, but they soon exploited the mine. My new task was to find alternative sources of gypsum, which we did in Spain. We also realized that to expand our business, it was going to be a requirement to expand beyond selling gypsum to these same customers. One component of cement manufacturing is a product called clinker. This clinker makes up 90% of cement, which makes up the sidewalks on your street. At the time, the world market, and in particular the US and South America, was extremely short of clinker, and the demand was extremely high. The one unknown source of supply was Eastern Europe. I was able to find a plant in Bulgaria where communism had just fallen and went off to visit with them. I visited often, spending more than 3 months over the next 6, traveling back and forth from the US to Athens and driving to Varna, which is an 11-hour drive. Varna is located on the Black Sea, but it was impossible to fly in because the planes were almost in a state of disrepair. We developed a trade, purchasing this clinker from Bulgaria, shipping it from the Black Sea and delivering it to the US and Peru. The key element here is really innovation. Any idea that is not innovative will not improve society or add any value, and this is an important element to entrepreneurism. We then also realized that these same people buying our gypsum needed other products, and fuel was the largest need in these plants. At the time, there was a relatively new product out called petroleum coke that was being produced to improve the efficiency at oil refineries. The product really had no commercial value. It was just produced in order to allow the refinery to produce lighter gases or more expensive fuels like jet fuel. So these cement plants could use this low-cost petroleum to substitute for coal. And we started selling the product to cement plants around the world, buying it from oil refineries such as Koch Industries. Now, large oil refiners have a standard that they typically don't appreciate some smaller company marketing products, and Koch is one of these same companies that felt that way. The Koch company approached this small company here in Bryn Mawr to buy the entire company, and the offer was quickly rejected. Koch turned and offered me a position to develop their international marketing, specifically in South America. At the time, the company had sales of about $5 million. Today, in managing South America, India, China, and the Middle East, revenues are in excess of $500 million. As I thought about what I wanted to speak to you tonight as it relates to what concerned me when I was entering the workforce, it was the competition that I would face internally at a company. Today, I manage several people that are 3 to 7 years removed from college, and it seems that the same concerns I had still exist today with them. It's a constant comparison to your peers. Am I doing as well as my peers? Am I making as much as my peers? Am I as close to my boss to get any derived benefits that my peers may get? Am I progressing quickly enough through this corporation? I want to say the same thing to you that my mentor and past boss had said to me early on. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Measure yourself against your own standards. Have your goals, work hard, stay committed, be honest, and act with integrity. And if you work on these things every day, you'll be successful and will be rewarded. This takes time. It's not something that's going to happen in 6 months, a year, and may take longer than 10 years. But during that time period, you'll learn things along the way that are invaluable experiences. An entrepreneur could be innovative and improve a current system in place, as we've seen in corporate America. But another type of entrepreneur is one that takes an idea from the genesis and develops their own idea, like what was done at the Princeton Running Company. I mentioned that I ran at Villanova, and I was committed to my training during my years here as well as after. Even during my years traveling all over the world, during my career, I continued with that same level of passion and commitment to running. I remember specific instances that I found completely normal, but were a slight shock to my colleagues and even my own training partners at home. One instance I remember was when I was on a small island off the coast of Cartagena called Isla de Rosario. We had to entertain a buyer for an overnight stay at this very secluded campsite that was only reached by a very small boat to carry the 4 of us to a private pier. I was extremely stressed as I had to get a long run of 18 miles in that day and had not had the opportunity. While approaching by the boat, I noticed a small clearing and beach not too far from where we were staying. So while the others settled in for a cocktail, I got my sneakers and swam over, holding the shoes above the water to not get them wet. Upon getting there, I realized the beach was only about 100 meters long, but off I went. After running 2 hours back and forth, there was a group of young kids that had gathered to watch this and began chanting, "Corre, gringo." Apparently, they had never seen this before. I finished up and swam back to the campsite where our huts were located, and this story was written up in Runner's World in 1993 as told by my training partner here back home. I could give you more examples about running through the streets of Cali, Colombia early on a Sunday morning and seeing somebody get shot, or being hit by a drunk driver in Varna, Bulgaria, where there were no police, or running around the parking lot of Chicago O'Hare Airport during a winter storm layover. That passion transferred into my own business. The passion for your own idea leads into my next topic, which is the birth and growth and eventual sale of the Princeton Running Company, which had its genesis in my passion for running. Running stores generally at this time were true destination stores, which meant they were not in the traditional shopping areas, but in areas you truly had to seek out to find. My innovation, my idea, was that I believed that running was becoming more mainstream. And America wanted a place to find these stores in highly trafficked areas where other retail shopping was happening. So in 1997, I opened my first store on Nassau Street in Princeton, next to a Starbucks, across the street from Princeton University, to sell running shoes and apparel. Before opening that store, I realized I had my limitations. The first is, I didn't know how to get any of the lines to sell. Nike, Asics, Adidas, I had no idea. The second was, I knew very little about running a retail business. What I did know was the fundamentals of business. So I partnered with a friend who had already had one successful store. The partnership seemed like a great fit. He was a great salesman, but just not very good at the fundamental business structure. I would find the space, guarantee the payment to the landlords, guarantee the payment to the vendors, and my partner would buy the lines and help get the business established. In return, he would have to work 1 day a week for 1 year and would get 49% interest in the business, and I would retain 51%. 15 minutes before our first day of opening, my partner calls. He had some personal issues and could not commit to working his 1 day a week and was renouncing his interest in our partnership. Well, this was a definite interesting turn of events for me. And another friend has finally pointed out to me every venture an adventure. There were a couple mistakes I made right out of the gates. The first was that I built the shelves in the store too deep. Why is this a problem? If you've ever been to a shoe store, all the shelves are built 12 inches deep so you can see all the sizes and styles that you carry. My shelves were so deep, I had product on top of product. I couldn't find any sizes or styles. And I had wasted all this space for a small store with very high rent. The bigger problem was that the sales were decent, but not to the level of expectations of the goods purchased by my then partner. I was faced with bills that were in no way matching sales, and after 4 months was forced into a very difficult situation. I looked into a small business association loan, but the time period was too long to get approval, and due to the requirements of the loan, I probably wouldn't meet the standards. As I personally guaranteed everything in the business, I had two options. I could declare bankruptcy or figure out how to increase the rate of sales of these goods to match the bills that were coming in. I decided to find another location, which I did in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and I moved half the goods to that store. It turned out to be a successful opportunity and a real eye-opening experience for me. I realized then that there was an opportunity and ability to manage multiple locations in this business. So now fast forward another 9 months, and I had just gotten off the train and driving from the train station in Washington, D.C. to a meeting with ExxonMobil in Fairfax, Virginia. And the route took me down M Street. And I noticed a really nice building on the corner of M Street and 34th, but it was charred on the inside from a fire. But it had a great location near the canal running path and Georgetown University. I also noticed that somebody was inside the building. So I got out of the car, and it turned out to be the owner of the building, and went back to speak with him after my meeting with Exxon. He was willing to rent me the store in as-is condition, with the caveat that I had to take the entire building. The building was 3 stories high and had an apartment above the store, which was 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. I decided to go ahead and agreed on the terms to rent the building, and the Georgetown Running Company was now born. I moved some people down from our Princeton store that wanted to be in D.C. to train within a well-known coach at Georgetown, and they were given a place to live as part of their compensation. It was important to have the ability to be faced with the problem and adapt to overcome the problem at hand, which was not wanting to rent that entire building, but only the small retail space. Kind of a quick side note on that apartment space. Those employees lived there until September 30th of 2011. And the weekend after September 11th, I went down to work in that store, and there was a tank parked in front of the building. And at the same time, on a busy Saturday afternoon, the FBI came in and told me they were going to eminent domain the building. And when I asked why, they said the Ukrainian embassy was across the street, and they needed to watch the Ukrainian embassy, so they had to take the space. Well, what I realized was that they didn't want the retail space. They wanted the location. So I explained to them that I had this apartment upstairs, and we negotiated a deal. They actually rented the apartment. my friends and colleagues and workers had to move out, and they stayed there for the next 4 years monitoring the Ukrainian embassy, but it saved my business. It actually was a stroke of luck that I rented the entire building and not just the retail space. The trend of opening stores in cities that I became acquainted with through business travel continued. We opened stores in Lexington, Hingham, Newburyport, Massachusetts, further developments in Washington, D.C., areas around New Jersey, which I was familiar with from growing up, Florida, and eventually Texas, where I met my wife and spent the better part of 2 years while dating her. The first store in Texas, in Sugar Land, was directly across the street from where I was living at the time. By the time the business was sold, we had 3 distribution centers, over 300 employees, 19 locations, and more than $20 million in sales. With the help of my team, we had expanded into the race timing business, screen printing business, race management, and had just launched our first season of our own private apparel line, Laisis Athletics, that was sold in our stores into our race timing business. I mentioned that passion is a key element, and I was really passionate about wanting to open a store also in New York City. I felt the market was underserved, and there was only one operator in the entire city, and I believe we could do a much better job in serving that marketplace. The problem was, where do I put the store and how do I manage the rent? Through a broker, who was also another Villanova graduate, we found a space in the Time Warner Center in New York City. This was the largest building constructed in New York since the World Trade Center, but was touted as a challenge, as two-level shopping in New York had traditionally been an absolute failure. Additionally, the mall was being publicized as a run-of-the-mill mall with no New York personality or character. Nevertheless, the location at the 26-mile mark of the New York City Marathon near Central Park seemed perfect for me. I got the opportunity to pitch the idea to the senior board member of the AOL Time Warner Center. I was the 5th company to present out of 5, and he politely explained to me there was no mystery in the lineup. There was very little expectation that we would be competitive to rent an 8,000 square foot space, which would then be the largest running store in the country, in what he believed was the greatest building in New York, with the highest rents found anywhere in New York. And oh yeah, he only had 15 minutes to hear me out. It was, after all, 6:30, and these presentations had started at 1. At 8 o'clock, we parted ways with an agreement for him to recommend to his board that we were the right mix for the mall, a true New York store. The New York Running Company was born in 2004 with a ribbon cutting by Mayor Michael Bloomberg, which was arranged by my good friend and partner and Villanova graduate Michael Cusick. The AOL company was impressed by my passion for the business and believed we would be successful for all the reasons pointed out during that meeting. One of the things that made that business so special for me was the dedicated people I had surrounded myself with in the business. I would return home from an overnight flight from somewhere else in the world to meet with Nike or Asics or Brooks at the time. That was the only time that I could fit it in. These companies were pretty flexible with me because we had grown to be the largest buyer of their goods in the running specialty channel in the country. However, these meetings, or our accounting meetings on my patio late at night, or our growth strategy sessions on a Sunday afternoon were not always the best for the other members of my team. While the business was my own, my team, and specifically my general manager, were committed and passionate about the growth and development of the business as well. These people were truly entrepreneurs and a large part of the success we achieved. The successful people, of the more than 300 we employed, had all an entrepreneurial spirit. They ran their shops as if it was their own, with their own personality and input, and this proved to be a successful way of operating a business. One of the things I thought about a lot was what if? What if the running stores didn't succeed? What if they did succeed? What if we wanted to sell? How were we going to value the business? What was it worth? I thought about this very early on in the development of the business. And while I needed to rent all the spaces I was using for retail, I could invest in properties for warehouse space and have the business pay for these properties. I did this as I had a true belief and point of view in the value of real estate. I also believed that the value of a tangible asset was easy to quantify, not like the goodwill in a business. So If the stores went under, I still had this tangible asset that I could monetize. This was a key element and thought when I moved in to purchase Kelly's. I had some experience in land acquisition and construction. Several years earlier, I had purchased a house on Lancaster Avenue in Haverford and then lived there with 6 of my friends to defray the cost. I was then able to purchase the neighbor's home next door at above market values because I realized that the value of the 2 properties together was worth more than the individual. After combining these 2 properties, we were able to construct 6 townhomes on the property, which are now directly across the street from the Haverford School. Kelly's at the time, I realized, was in a foreclosure process. The bank was taking the property to sheriff's sale. So with the same partner I had in the townhomes, off we went to the sheriff's sale at the Montgomery County Courthouse every month for 6 months. And every month for 6 months, the sale was delayed due to some exception brought to the attention of the court by the borrower on the note. This was an extremely frustrating experience, and I thought there has to be a better way to go about this. I found out that the loan was held by a small local bank and set up a meeting. Through that meeting, I discovered a couple of key elements. The first was that the bank did not like having bad debt on its books. What bank would, but this bank in particular really didn't like it. On top of this, the board was mandating that the sheriff's sale take place, but they were having difficulty in doing that. The final realization was that this loan was an SBA loan, a Small Business Association loan. This was extremely significant as the bank only held a small fraction of the debt on the loan, estimated at less than 30% of the total value of the debt. So with this in my mind, I prepared an offer that would reimburse the bank 100% for their outstanding debt and slightly more. The bank gladly accepted, and I was now the proud owner of a bad debt note. What I believed, though, in purchasing that note was that the best case was that I could act quicker than any bank, and at the worst case, the borrower would come to his senses and run out of excuses to delay the foreclosure. I was able to contact the borrower, who was then enjoying life in the Bahamas, and made a proposal to him. I said if he would agree not to contest the sale, I would not pursue him legally for his default and all the other judgments against him because of non-payment of the note. He accepted, and 90 days later, I now had control of the property at a very reasonable price. When I was finally able to get access inside the building, it was an absolute disaster. The kegs from the previous operation were still sitting in the same sludge in the dirt basement. There were homeless people that had access to the premises, and any memorabilia that was worth anything was gone. And the worst part, somebody had stolen the moose. I thought for sure the township would appreciate someone cleaning up the property and revitalizing an eyesore on Lancaster Avenue. However, this is where the process became excruciatingly bureaucratic in dealing with the township. The township, its officials, the police, the neighbors did not want to see Kelly's open and held up the renovation plans for almost a year. Eventually they agreed and construction went underway. Now the reason for the acquisition of Kelly's was actually the land. It was not to operate the business, but because of the business opportunity and actually owning real estate in downtown Bryn Mawr. So the second part of the process was to understand and find someone to rent the finished space. After meetings with small operators and large, as big as the TGI Fridays chain, I realized we would never get the return anticipated by renting the space, and secondly, the renter would never open the establishment as Kelly's. The decision was made to get into the restaurant business. I can't say it's been easy, but it has been exciting. The new moose over the door is originally from Maine and was put up opening day in March 2004. Through the exposure to the market, the group involved in Kelly's then moved to acquire the Wild Onion, which became Flippin' Bailey's. We did realize that the concept had to be slightly differentiating to not cannibalize our existing business at Kelly's. We named the bar after my 2 labs, Flippin' Bailey, and spent a considerable amount of investment to renovate the building, installing new windows, a more open feel, and offering PlayStations at each booth with the hopes that it would attract more families that it could entertain children while mom and dad would enjoy their meal. It amazes me how things often come full circle in life as was evident on the SBA loan and the fact I had looked into this loan during my financial crisis early on the running stores, and then it came back around with the Kelly's acquisition. A similar situation occurred with the Ale House. When developing the running stores, Nike was a very small player in the running category. Although this running category represented less than 1% of Nike's overall sales volume as a company, it had a greater impact to them at national chains like Dick's and Modell's, and there was a direct correlation for success in the running specialty channel as it transitioned into mainstream America at these bigger box stores. And Nike was failing in this larger channel where 20% of Nike sales was being derived. To combat that problem, Nike approached us with an offer to invest in our stores and showcase their product in true Nike fashion. They would market the store, they would market the space that they were now occupying, they provide us with greater discounts as incentive, and then also educate our employees and to be more adept at selling that Nike product. Well, that similar opportunity was brought to us at the Ale House. Anheuser-Busch distributor here was having some challenges to get market share for their craft beers. They approached us to provide some investment in the establishment, marketing for the business, training for our staff, and to provide access to the local beer producers of these craft beers to hold events at the Ale House. In return, I was to make a 1-year commitment to the business. I had to carry at least 120 beers all the time, and 60% of those beers had to be from the Anheuser-Busch distributor. It actually truly was a win-win-win. That third win was for the customer. There are little offerings west of Philadelphia with the beer selection and knowledgeable staff that we have at the Ale House right here in Garret Hill. So if there's anything I could convey here to you tonight in terms of entrepreneurism, it's to keep an open mind, as you never know where opportunities will present itself. Always follow your passion, as it makes working 70, 80, or 90 hours a week more palatable. Be committed to your passion, and that passion will generate wealth in return. Thank you.
Gene, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. There are a ton of questions already coming through, so I'm just going to throw these right at you.
All right.
And students, if you have additional questions, follow the instructions on the sheet, send those in, and they will get relayed right up to me. So, right off the top here, from the engineering school, how has the online shopping market affected brick and mortar stores like your running company?
Yeah, good question. We had to differentiate ourselves and compete in that marketplace. And obviously, online shopping is always going to be there. But where we differentiated ourselves was in service. We can't compete against a Zappos or any online services for price. But what we could offer is a memorable experience to the customer that would come through the door. And those customers coming through the door were coming there because we had the knowledge to put them in the proper training attire or the proper footwear and the proper shoes. So that was the way that we distinguished ourselves and competed against the online shopping networks.
All right, another question here. This is from the nursing school. You spoke earlier about following your passions. What's up next for you?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on that when I have a lot of free time, I'm not real good with myself, and that's one of those times now. When I sold the running stores, a huge part of my life was cut out, and I found myself shopping with my wife in the grocery store on Saturdays, driving her nuts just as much as it was driving me nuts. And I don't know. I mean, I'm constantly looking for that next opportunity, and we've gotten into boating, and I think there's actually a real shortage of dockage space on the East Coast. There's more and more houses being built on the waterfront. And right now, actually, we're looking to invest in marinas up and down the East Coast.
All right, marinas. Next big industry. All right. Here's a question from the Villanova School of Business. What did you say to the executives to convince them to let you use space in the Time Warner building?
Yeah, a couple things. One was just to give an overview of our background and where I came from, and to be evident and clear of my passion and commitment to the business. They wanted to know up front that I had my entire savings invested in this business, that I wasn't just going to walk away from a commitment. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I got to explain where our stores were located. I realized that his son-in-law lived in Westfield, New Jersey, where we had a very small store, and his son-in-law was also a runner. So it became evident to him in putting all this together that the experiences that his son-in-law was sharing with him at family dinners was translating back to a business that we had owned and operated. So that was important. And the last thing had to do with the center itself and the fact that it was getting killed in the press, that there was nothing that was truly New York. You had a Hugo Boss store on the first floor that was publicized as paying $1,000 a square foot. That's great. Williams-Sonoma, J. Crew. You had all these chain stores, and our proposal was the New York Running Company. It was a running store for New Yorkers. And he liked that and gave us a below market rent deal, and we consummated our agreement.
All right, we'll stay on the running company here. Another question here. How did you stimulate sales for your first shoe store?
Yeah, this was tough. My thought process, as I said, was that I wanted to put the running stores where traditional shopping was going on. But to do that, I had to overpay for rent in terms of what my competitors in the running store retail businesses were paying. But I looked at that as an investment in advertising. There were thousands of people that were going to walk by that store on Nassau Street in Princeton, whether they were just going to get a cup of coffee from Starbucks or they were walking to the university. So the best publicity that we had was just the store locations, and we followed that suit with every single store we opened. The second thing we did was we made sure that our service was the best. And when you can duplicate a high level quality of service, your business will grow over time. It just takes a longer period of time to grow. So to answer your question, the promotion was really from the location of the stores.
All right, this question is related to your first job out of Villanova. So it's from the arts and sciences. But what advice would you give to those of the students in the room that are trying to find their first job after leaving the Villanova community?
Yeah, be patient. You know, everybody has to do certain things in their life to make sure that you can pay your bills, and I mean that is first and foremost. But you know, I just really believe that I didn't want to work in some forum that I wasn't comfortable and passionate about, and that was the reason I left New York City. It just wasn't the right fit for me. But when I walked into the interview, and I was not a very good interviewer at college, there was just a fit between the owner of the company and myself, and I think a lot of it had to do with athletics. And the fact that he valued somebody involved in athletics because he thought that there was going to be a commitment to the workforce, and he was going to allow me to do things and continue to train, and in return, he believed that I was going to give value back to the business, and that worked. So, you know, it's difficult, but I think you'll know when you have that connection with somebody on that right job that you're going to find.
All right, we'll stick with another question about Villanova. This question is from the arts and sciences. What was your most memorable moment here at Villanova?
Graduating.
Graduating.
Yeah. I was not a great student. I graduated with a 2.7, and it was a struggle to get there. I mean, I was the kid in the back of the room that just was hoping nobody was going to call on me. You know, I just wasn't real good at it, and I was probably too shy, and I didn't like speaking up, and so I was really happy when I got through and could move on.
Here's a question from the Villanova School of Business. Have you had any chronic running injuries? And if yes, how did you overcome them, and how did it affect your entrepreneurial lifestyle?
Yeah, I think every runner, and Marcus chime in, but every runner gets injured. It's just it's a nature of the sport, and it's extremely frustrating and debilitating as an individual because it just drives you insane. I wouldn't say that it affected me as an entrepreneur. It definitely affects your psyche as an individual. I mean, my wife can tell you, just get a little bit more moody when you're hurt, you know. But I think that you never lose sight of the goal, and you continue to be focused and continue to move towards that end goal. So the two things were kept relatively separated throughout my life, and there were times when I had to really focus on my career where my running suffered, and that was okay. I mean, those were decisions that I had to make along my career, and there was a period of time for a couple of years where I really wasn't running very much. But later on in life, when I was more established in my career, and I realized there were certain goals that I really wanted to get to in running, I backed off a little bit on the career and picked up my running again. So try to keep the two things channeled and separated.
All right. It's a little lighter question, but during these moments of injury, you probably enjoyed some ice cream. Students want to know Thomas's Sweets or Twist, which has the better ice cream in Princeton?
Thomas's Sweets, and I've actually cut ice cream out because my cholesterol is through the roof, which I didn't realize until a couple of years ago.
I was asking a light question. I'm taking jabs at ice cream. All right. Here's another question. This one's from the law school. What are some characteristics that you look for in your business partners? You mentioned having a number of business partners in your different ventures.
Yeah, partnerships are really tough. Any partnership's tough, and I think that the really good partnerships that we have, and we have a great partnership in the businesses at Kelly's and Flip and Bailey's and the Ale House. I think there has to be a common understanding of what the actual goal is for those businesses, and there has to be a commitment to that goal. It's very easy to try to deviate when things are going well to maybe cash out on the business or just change direction. And the good partners that I have see, again, where that end zone is and what the goal is, and there's a common desire to reach that goal together.
All right. There's a question from Arts and Sciences. How did your family respond to your decision to quit accounting when you realized you didn't enjoy it?
Yeah, my dad wouldn't talk to me for about a year. And no joke, he was really upset. And Villanova, when I graduated, had just reached $10,000 a year. And he helped put me through school, and I had some student loans when I came out. But he was beside himself that he just paid all this money, and I was letting go a job in New York. And at the time, that job was paying almost $30,000 a year to work in an accounting firm in New York City. So it was really difficult for me personally, and we got through it, and things came out okay.
All right. A question from the business school. How well did Villanova prepare you for a career in corporate America? This is on tape.
I think the structure that Villanova provides to you is the foundation for you to be successful in whatever career that you choose. I think that what was really valuable for me at Villanova was the students that I was surrounded with, because it's a very competitive environment and people are extremely smart, and the university gives you all the tools to succeed, and it's up to you to really take advantage of those tools. But the students around me made me a better person and made me more dynamic during my 4 years here.
There's another question from the College of Nursing. Because you've been very creative in your career. I think we heard some of your creative solution to having an apartment to rent. You made that part of your employees' compensation plan. Where do you find your creative spark?
I think it's just an adapt to overcome issue. I really wanted that space in Georgetown, and I remember coming home and thinking, geez, what did I just sign off on? Because the rent was never going to be able to be paid from the sales in that retail business. But I probably made a rash decision, but I think that I knew deep down that I was going to figure it out. I knew that location was right, and I knew that I was never going to be able to find another space in Georgetown to position a running store on M Street. It was just too expensive. So this was my one and only opportunity, and I felt that I mitigated the downside too, by the way. The lease was only 2 years. Where I've made some really huge mistakes was in 2007. I signed a lease on the east side of New York City for a 10-year lease at above market rents, and before we opened the store for the first day, the stock market had crashed and the bottom of the world fell out. So lucky for me, that went along with the sale of the business. But I think just try to mitigate your downside and be creative in your approach to things.
All right, here's a question from the School of Business. Did you ever try to start a business while still in college? And do you have any suggestions for someone trying to do that?
I did not try to start a business when I was still in college. I was really committed to just getting through school, and I was really committed to my running. And I think between those two things, and I also had to work part-time to pay for expenses, I didn't probably have the creativity at that time to take on anything else. So, my partner Dan Kelly is here. He probably could give you a better direction in starting your own business in college. But I think that the theme is still the same: follow your passion. And if you realize what your passion is early on, there's no reason to wait to react on it.
Okay. Speaking of that, you mentioned some of your challenges during the academic experience and being busy with work and things and trying to start a business. We have a question here very much related to that. That's how do you prioritize your time and determine what's most important for you at this moment?
At this moment, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that your priorities change through life, and you learn a lot through life and mistakes you've made, and you don't want to repeat those same mistakes. And there was a long period of time I was just working way too much, and my family life suffered. And I think that I learned that you don't create those same mistakes again. There has to be a balance in life, and of course, things are going to tip the scales one way or another at certain times on what you're focused on and what's real important to you, whether it's your academics or your athletics or if it's your family. But I think there just has to be a balance that you can juggle around as you move through life.
All right, here's an interesting question. You owned a running store and a pub. Which of these is a better release of endorphins?
I can tell you the running is better for you, but it's funny. I think there's a correlation between runners and beer. I don't know, for some reason, most of the guys that I ran with love to drink too many beers, so I think there's a good balance there as well.
Okay. Here's a question from Arts and Sciences. Have you ever thought about penetrating the beer market by producing a beer unique to Kelly's or Flip and Bailey's?
I have not. That's out of my realm of expertise. Even with the ale house, to be quite honest with you, I don't know all the nuances of how a beer is produced and what ingredients go into a beer. And I think that some of the areas that I've been able to be successful is I've realized that I can delegate some of these things and not have to know every single last thing, but I macro understand what the business is all about. So no, I don't have any desire to make my own beer.
All right, that is the end of our questions. We have one final question. Here it is. From the business school, did you ever feel doubtful about quitting your accounting job and working as a painter to first accomplish your dreams?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. I mean, to forego a salary that was great at that time of my life, and with all the bills I had to pay, it was very, very difficult and definitely second guessing. But like I said, if you're committed to your passion, all things usually work out for the best.